Good morning, it's Norma Cowie. It's Wednesday morning, and I'm here with Norma Talks Metaphysics. On Sunday, I think it was, I was talking about synchronicity, how I was thinking of something to talk about, and something else came across my path. Same thing happened today. I had a person that followed me quite a bit, actually, emails me and is usually on a mental mind treatments. He sent me a long email, which I will be responding to today because that's in my time slot there, dealing with his father's death and just generally the loss of someone who's really important. Today, when I was getting ready with the computer and the emails, a good friend of mine, her brother had just died at around 4 o'clock this morning. We had just heard the 2 days ago that he had cancer, and already he is gone. So, and the adjustments of that change. I had already decided I was going to talk about change today because it seemed to be around, and lots of change of the weather. Here, our weather has just dropped. Goodbye, late summer. So it's really an interesting time when we're dealing with change. How do we deal with that philosophically? And many people that I run into in my life do not have a philosophy, do not have an understanding of support from either other people and or a belief system. I often find that is unfortunate, that you don't have a belief system about the bigger aspect of life and birth and life itself, and then the eventual death. Each one of us that is a human knows that our time will come up. And no matter what, every year when your birthdays, everything clicks over that one extra. And for a while, it seems like you can live for a long time. And most of us do. Sometimes they don't. But it's like, how do we deal with that? How do we cope with that? How do we bring that into an understanding? And this is where your spiritual philosophy really pays off. Living in a family where I had a mother who had, as she said, in her childhood life, saw more of church than she ever needed to see, because her father was involved in a church and she ended up going to church 3 times a day on a Sunday. And but she made sure, myself in particular, my brother kind of got away with it a little bit, went to first to Sunday school with one church, and I've talked about that before, and then I went with friends to another church and had a kind of probably a more philosophical basis from that as I moved forward. Then did nothing until I came to Canada, and then my metaphysical interest began. First with the tarot, and then other things, and then also starting to really study metaphysics, of which I became a minister of, and being a minister in 2 different organizations up to this point till now. I've let it go. But it's how to use philosophy, have that philosophy about life, how it all comes together. And when change happens, whether it's a job, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in family, their life coming to an end, where do you fill in all that? Where does that all come together and move into an understanding? And that's what's the really important thing, because there are long stretches of time in your life where everything just moves along really smoothly. And then there are those rocky times when it doesn't. Unexpected changes happen, comes in from nowhere. And it's like many times it's things you don't expect. And one of the things I want to touch on this as well today, is that when people come to the end of their life that touches yours, what is your belief about that? Do you believe that you go on to another place? And I know so many people believe that's it, nothing more. But if you deal anything in the psychic realm, you realize that all you've done is shed the skin and you go to the true essence of who you are, to the level, because there are levels. It's not like one big meeting place and you're figuring out, where do we go from here? Do we reincarnate here? Do we wait here for a while? Or what do we do? Learning. What we don't learn in the physical plane, we have the opportunity, and that's the operative word, opportunity, to learn on the other plane. I was explaining to somebody the other day that when it's your time, even if you have a belief or not, somebody that either you know that has already passed over, or a guide, a special person. Sometimes people are over there, that's their job, is to help escort you across. It should not be frightening, but it is for many. The fear of letting go of the world that they have known for how many years they've had it, and moving into an essence of what we call light, and knowing that there are people there welcoming you, and also people helping you across. The letting go of the physical to move into the non-physical. Not an easy thing for anybody, because we kind of get attached to our physicality. I'm going to tell you a funny story that happened during the night for me, and it wasn't about leaving. I was in an extremely deep sleep, deep sleep. And I set my alarm, especially when I'm talking, for 7:00 in the mornings. And in this deep sleep, I heard the alarm go off. And I struggled to come awake enough, thinking that it was 7. And I don't remember being in this deep of sleep before, but I was like deep asleep. And I struggled with myself to bring myself to consciousness, to be aware of the time. Then I looked. It was not 7. I think it was like 2 or 2. I can't even remember now, but it was really early. I hadn't been asleep that long, so I was in that deep sleep you can go to, which of course I really needed. But it was like, what on earth? Well, okay, so then I had to look at my phone and see who phoned, because there was definitely a noise. Who phoned? Nobody. Who messaged? Nobody. So where did this noise, which sounded like my awake, alarm, where the heck did it come from? I have no idea to this day. But so that just meant for a little bit longer before I went back to sleep again, but not to that deep sleep that I was in. I found that really interesting. Part of the synchronicity today, because I thought, well, when you're in that deepness, and so you're not conscious of the world here, you're not tied into this. Well, I was once the sound made, but it's like a sense of the direction that you're going. But I've kind of sidetracked, because I found that was an interesting story to have this morning before I'm talking. And I'd already decided to be on change, because this was very unusual. Yes, I get up in the night. Older people do that, by the way. If you don't know already, is that you'll tend to get up several times in the night. And not often don't sleep as long. So anyway, change. Any kind of change. All of a sudden you're working and then your job stopped. That's happened to me a couple of times, where the job is all of a sudden not there anymore. How do you adapt to that and have the belief that you'll find another one, or everything will work out? Sometimes people put down people who have a sort of a philosophical outlook that everything will be all right. I come from New Zealand, and basically in New Zealand, there is a saying, she'll be right, Jack. That's a philosophical understanding that no matter what, it works out. I find in Canada, I haven't heard as much of that philosophy that I grew up with. But then at New Zealand at the time, we had about 2 million people, and it has a lot more here. And that could be part of the reason. But the thing is that you need to be aware when the door closes here, another one opens there, but you've got to be open for it. You need to be able to say what, when, where, and how. As I got older, many things changed in my life quite quickly, actually, when I got quite older, actually. Until then, I was very much in control of everything that went on in my life and things. My children were gone. They had their lives doing their thing, and I had to figure out where I fit in. And some things didn't work out the way I wanted. And I didn't always handle it appropriately on one level, but on the other philosophical level, I always knew it would work out. And to expand my mind a little bit to opportunities and possibilities. And follow the curve, you might say, follow the curve a little bit. So to trust the philosophy, to trust that you are looked after. All of those things that very often people think are hocus pocus stuff. But what it does is gives you a feeling or a thought of moving forward with greater ease. Therefore, when the synchronicities begin to happen, like all of a sudden, this friend of mine, within, 2 days, 3 days, finds out her brother's really ill and gone. How do you there's an adaptation time, a time to accept the change. I know that also the person that's email, which I will be addressing this afternoon to type the answers, is that first of all, there's a letting go. And there's a grieving of that because a person has taken up time and presence in your life. And you grieve for that. But at the same point of the grieving, there's also, if you have a spiritual understanding of how death works, there's also a celebration in that because now they're given an opportunity to grow, to understand, to learn, and decide what they want to do next. That's if they are elevated and not into that there's nothing there and nothing, because then it just takes longer on the other side to be taught and to have everything explained to them what really goes on, how it all works. And those of us that have worked in the spiritual community, where we not only learn about death and dying, but we learn about life here and there, in a sense, and how everything is on a vibration. It's like when people phone up for me and they want a reading, my job is to move into their vibration and talk about it and then find what they want to know, what solutions they want to have in relation to their lives. And I've always been what I call a practical reader, and give an element of understanding of how they can organize their life to work. It's not that different on the other side. There are teachers at every level. Think of a ladder. There's the bottoms, and it's held. It's not like a floppy ladder. It's not going to fall over. And so what level are you at? What's your understanding? And this is not the understanding of how the life works down here so much as what is your inner understanding? Do you understand the principle of love? The love for all. It's funny, I was looking at my little God cards and thinking, is there anything appropriate for what I'm going to say? Because most of you know, I don't always know what I'm going to say till I start saying it. And this little one says, it's got a dove on it and hands letting go. I bless you and release you with love. And that's all we can do with people who have come to the end of the line and are transitioning into the next phase, which is the in-between stage. Do they come back here? Do they stay over there? Do they go and transcend somewhere else where, who knows where? And on the back, I always like looking at the back side of these. Excuse me here. And it says, when I forgive and release my brothers and sisters, I forgive and release myself. What happens very often when we lose somebody that we've been close to and we love is we hold on. We don't set them free. And I've run into this a couple of times with clients where they hold that person that has passed on so tightly that the person on the other side is just saying, let me go. I've got things to do. I've got places to go. And we forget. And that's why the releasing is really important. Send love, send acceptance, send joy, all those things. And yes, I know we go through our grieving, and I'm not disputing that. But in the bigger picture of everything, change. I've talked a bit about the death and dying element, dealing with that. But what about a job change? What about a house change? What about a divorce coming up, separation first, divorce? Those are hard. How do you deal with those sometimes? And often what happens in that, you shut down and go away. You go down into the essence of you and kind of deal with your own sadness or joy. Sometimes it's like, oh, thank goodness, so, that's gone. So it can be many, many ways emotionally. But the reality is, this planet, if we all were just operating from a love source and an acceptance and love go together quite closely. And we don't always accept things as they are. We fight them, actually, and then we get mad or we get upset. And so it's really about experience, and we all have experiences. And my father used to say, you can't put an old head on young shoulders. I grew up kind of old. I was one of those people. He often used to say, she's a funny little thing. Really, I don't remember being little or funny, but it was like I was always serious. I had a serious bent within me, and I wanted to understand, which is why I had a lot of older aunts, mostly aunts, and I used to sit and listen. And I had a lot of nieces and nephews beneath me, and they used to say, "Oh, you just want to listen," but actually, I learned a lot from them because they would talk about what was going on in their lives and etc. And I began to put things together when I was still quite young. Putting life together, what I was learning under you might say the spiritual church element, or not that had that much to do with me at that point, because it really wasn't my kind of religion. But I've traveled, I've experienced, I've been to places in Europe, I've been and seen some of the big churches and listened to some of the elements that have gone on, healing elements, etc. How does that impact us? Do we just let it go? And then when something happens, like my friend this morning, and all of a sudden you're face to face with losing, in a sense, your brother that you care about and do whatever you can for them. And then all of a sudden they're not there in physical form, but they're in transition. Now, one of the things I learned many years ago was you allow 3 days for the transition when someone dies, 3 days. And that's, I think, in some of the religions, people sit and hold the sense of that, helping them in that transition. Western society, I find, doesn't really hold that much. Somehow we're like, oh, well, we've got all these other things we have to deal with. But I really just don't want, I don't know why I do know why I'm concentrating on the death process, is because my friend's brother's in his journey now. But I want you to realize that change happens many, many different ways, where you have to leave the old behind and move into the new, where you need to have a philosophy of understanding that you do work to create your vibration. You do work to create what is there. I know I always got upset when everything didn't fall exactly how I wanted it to. But I learned that was just part of the process. That's like being woken up at 2:00 in the morning when you're waiting for 7. So it's like, these things happen. How do you deal with them? How do you handle them? I used to say it's not the event that's important, it's how you handle the event. What you do here in A has a result in B. How you are able to understand, how you're able to stay in a positive, uplifting, accepting place. And that means loving yourself, loving those around you, and loving and accepting are very equal. Sometimes we don't realize when we accept something as is, we are in fact loving that. Loving just is a bigger energy than accepting, but the bottom line is always acceptance. Acceptance of change, acceptance of awareness. So it's like every January, I talk about goal setting. What are your goals? I have a list that I can go back during the year and look, what have I achieved and what haven't I achieved? So I remind myself, especially in the middle of the year, and we're past that now. So maybe you break it into quarters and you take a look at your goals. Are you online? Are you on track? Because it's very easy to get off track. Things happen in the world, things happen around. Happen if you have a strong, big family around you, or even a little family around you. What's happening there? That will have an effect. Everything has an effect into your life. So, are you strong? Do you recognize no matter what, everything works out? You may not like how it works out, but it will work out. And in that working out, then you're free to move on in some direction or other. Life is a very interesting thing with the twists and changes. If I had realized when I came to Canada at the tender age of 18, waiting to get married, beginning to have a family, etc., the twists and the turns that my life has taken, I wouldn't say that I designed it. I just went step by step by step by step. You can do this, you do the same thing. If you look back at your life, if you have enough years, and most of you who watch do, look back and see and notice when you have moved, we'll say in faith, in a sense of understanding, or when you have moved, I should say not moved, because that's what happens. We get stuck. And often we have regrets, and then we get angry because life isn't giving us what we want and we're not accepting enough. And I often have talked about acceptance. But being a little bit all over the place today, I apologize a little bit for that, because it wasn't like I have a piece of paper, but I just knew that with everything that's happened in the last 24 hours, that this is where I needed to go today. And somebody out there may benefit, will benefit, can benefit by recognizing we're all vibration. Right now, we're in a physical vibration, and we work with that vibration in this world to create peace and harmony within ourselves. When we have peace and harmony within ourselves, which we may not have all the time, but if we work towards it, accept it, love ourselves, and then love others, what begins to happen? Things begin to move really well. And then time goes by. And so, I don't know, it's like a big jigsaw puzzle that comes together. And I just want everyone to be able to work with that. So I think that concludes everything I'm going to ramble on about today. And I just want to say hello to Maggie G. Good morning. And thank you for watching. And also Dorothy, good morning. And she says, I love your perspective. Blessings to you. I appreciate that. I've noticed today people have come in, listened to a bit, and dropped out because it's not what they want to either hear or see. But I really want to thank you for dropping by, even if it is for a few minutes. And because maybe some of the words go in and think about it and do the things. So I want to utilize this again and say, just a minute, I got something crop up here. I bless you and release you with love. Your journey is your journey. Know that. You are the driver, the inspirator, like inspiring. You're the driver. You're the one that's behind the wheel. Remember that song that was sung? Let Jesus take the wheel. Well, I'm saying You take the wheel. Knowing that force of love is with you, knowing that the universal loves you and you're creating your world, plus, minus, whatever, the best you can. Wish you well. Today's Wednesday. I will be back Sunday, but look for those little "Are you aware?" there. My computer's guy's coming today, so we'll see whether I still have, if I have a computer in the next couple of days, I'll have my little "Are you aware?" out. Anyway, blessings. Thank you. And definitely back Sunday morning. Bye.